Hello, hello, salut, I am the Rasta Witch. Here's where we learn the way of the Yansway Rasta, which is to say, my kind of Ital. Please subscribe and begin your own kind of Yansway witchcraft. All roads lead to Rome. Home. Okay, this is part B. It was just getting too long. So now, the first and second seals have been opened. Haile Selassie and the opening of the seven seals. So I'll just go right where I left off. Okay, it was 1947, the Truman Doctrine, where we left off. The pale horse, the Cold War, marches on. Communism and capitalism, East versus West, Russia against America, Sputnik, atom bombs, death and Hades, all of them, pale riders. The Cold War spread like a cancerous disease and soon infected Asia. North Korea invaded South Korea. Communism had been installed in the North, so America took the South, beginning the breaking of America's power of pride. War was being waged by the two primary contenders, using North and South Korea as pieces on a chessboard. When America put the South under UN protection, the Chinese entered the war on the side of the North Koreans, called a ceasefire, bringing the war to a stalemate, the Korean War, agreeing to peace talks, ending the war mostly. In 1953, Dwight D. Eisenhower was made the United States president. Historians say Russia genuinely were trying to avoid conflict with the US of A. This puts blame partially back on America. It didn't really end until the Berlin Wall came down in 1989 and 1990-91. This makes Dwight D. Eisenhower the rider of the pale horse. In 1954, Haile Selassie I made a visit to America and gave a speech, opening the fourth seal. The speech emphasized the impossible pressures that are put on the smaller states by the great powers. If the small states were to rid themselves of the superpowers, then the pale horse followed by death and Hades would be no more. He said, quote, "For the smaller state, foreign policy is the basis of its existence, since arms, by definition, cannot suffice to an end. We feel it important that the smaller states should be able to survive and make a contribution to world peace. It is certain that the basic support for the principle of collective security comes not from the larger states, but from the smaller states, which have more to gain and lose by failure of its application. In this respect, it is significant that the smaller states involved in the UN efforts in Korea outnumbered the larger states." End quote. This proves conclusively that it is the major powers that are the cause of the continuing wars on our planet. The four horsemen, the white, red, black, and pale, all spell out a message we must learn to make world peace a reality, and to understand why things are as they are today. Beginning the millennium of world peace, Revelations 20:1-3. It explains what our situation is, how the struggle began, and why. Jah will not force world peace. It all is happening to teach us so we can understand and grow into it. So the white horse was 1916, that was the first seal. The red horse was 1936, that was the second seal. Hitler's the rider of the red horse. The black horse was 1949, the third seal, Harry S. Truman. The Pale Horse was 1954, the fourth seal, Dwight D. Eisenhower. So like when you read history, the Harry S. Truman is the black horse, because like all these new ways of dying came, and then the Pale Horse, the Cold War, get it? The four horsemen of the apocalypse. Now, post-Korean War, the beast is a machine, no remorse, hungry for financial gain and power. On YouTube, we see Catholics singing hymns to Lucifer. In 1966, the Rastafarian movement had gotten big enough that Babylon was worried, so they figured out a plan. They arranged it so Haile Selassie I would go to visit on a visit to Jamaica, and other things. There are many reasons that it happened. They figured when the Rastas see him, they will finally realize he is just a human. Or, of course, they know not the real definition of who Jah incarnate, the Son, even is, a demigod. But, au contraire, let's see what happened. On April 21st, 1966, the plane of Haile Selassie I was being awaited by many, many Jamaicans. It was rainy all day, but nothing could stop the crowds. Then, suddenly, the rain stopped. Clouds parted as 7 white doves flew out. Then the plane became visible, a great bird, as it had been called by the Bible. When the plane landed, it stayed there as people chanted and prayed. We have all seen the video coverage of all this on YouTube, and I'll put a video after this. Everyone wanted to see their God, Jah. Then Haile Selassie I came out of the plane and saw all the Rastas. He burst into tears and returned back into the plane to pray. The police couldn't contain the crowd, so they asked the respected Mortimer Plano if he could create a space for the emperor, which he did. Then Haile Selassie I exited the plane, escorted by Mortimer. He went to the people, saying through an interpreter, "Holy priests and warriors are the dreadlocked Rastafari. I am he." Babylon's plans had failed. Instead of weakening the Rasta faith that he is Jah, it had become stronger. This day is still celebrated each year in Jamaica. Then he got a car escorted by police. He got in a car escorted by the police. And you'll see this in the video after this. And he went to give his love to the movement. First, he went to George V Park, where he laid a wreath at the foot of the Sepulchre in memory of the blood spilled for Ethiopia. He was there for 3 days. He met Sir Alexander Bustamante and many others, giving them, Revelation 6, 9 through 11, giving them white robes, or as we call them today, awards, 12 in all, to the Rasta brethren. And he himself was given a doctorate in law. Bob Marley couldn't make it that day, but his wife Rita went, and as he waved his hands for all to see, Rita saw the marks in his hands from the other incarnation of the same deity, Jah, when he was hung on the cross. This day was the opening of the 5th seal. From 1930, the coronation of Haile Selassie I, begins the church era known as Philadelphia, Revelations 3, 7 through 13. Philadelphia means the city of brotherly love, so it is the era that births Rastafarianism. And this era ends in 1975. In 1975 is when Haile Selassie I, who is said to be a Mason, disappeared from history at 83 years old. He was the last king of a 3,000-year-old dynasty of kings, the first king being the son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. This family is the tribe of Judah, like Jesus through Mary. Somewhere between 1975 and 1976, he disappears after a coup of students took over the throne, ending the line of kings with Haile Selassie I. We can imagine him ascending to heaven like the Lorax, separating from his body. This, in 1975, was the opening of the sixth seal, and began the next era, the church in Laodicea. In 1976, the earth saw some of the worst earthquakes, one killing over 2,000 people. This seal is all about the harm the beast Babylon has done to the earth. It describes it from the perspective of Jesus and John the Revelator. Actually, it is Jesus repeating the prophecy of Daniel from the Old Testament. He talks of the pollution, blood-red moon, and in the daytime that it would be so bad that the sky would be dark with smog, blocking the sun, etc. Children playing with leopards, like in Isaiah 11:6 and 7, like Steve Irwin or Mark Marks, etc. Today, we are in the era of Laodicea, Revelations 3:14 through 19. The ancient city of Laodicea was the place with the best universities in the world. It had the best doctors and a famous eye salve. It represents the pride of Babylon. It was and is a wonderful place like today. One big problem, however, with Laodicea was the water was warm and gross, making people spit it out. Gross. Today's food is practically poison. The real reason Haile Selassie I, the Most High, came and went like a thief in the night was because he left a message, a lesson, in the form of his life story, opening the first 6 seals. This is why the Yan Sui faith finds the required books, the autobiographical books of Haile Selassie I, as the most important books one can read. More important than the Bible. If that were possible, it is not. One must be properly prepared to overstand. If we learn how to stop Babylon and begin world peace and the healing of the earth, the millennium, then this is possibly just a spark to start that fire. So read them. So I have at the end of this the audiobook, especially volume 1, which is what the audiobook is. The Bible is all too important. It is the living waters, Jah. So when Jah calls for the soul groups, the rainbow warriors, the hill, we will hear his voice, recognize it. Revelations 3:20 through 22, Revelation 7:17, and Matthew 25:1 through 3. So the sixth chapter of Revelations is where we are right now. And then the seventh chapter of Revelations just goes over all that, goes over, the different soul groups and the 144,000 soul groups, and all the the environmental problems and everything. And then the seventh seal is opened at the beginning of the 8th chapter. So that's because the sixth seal was when Jah ascended to heaven, so to speak, ascended to heaven, disappeared from history in 1975-76, opened the sixth seal, and began the era of Laodicea, which is now, so that we could absorb everything. Like in the 5th seal, he says, weep not, until everybody else suffers like you did. The first will be last, and the last will be first. So they need to catch up, and so there's things that need to be fulfilled, but most of it's already been fulfilled, but there still are wars, and the war of Armageddon. Armageddon's a place, There was it's Armageddon, just like how this is the era of Laodicea. Armageddon was a place, so they're all ancient things. Even Babylon was an ancient city. That's all ancient things that are, you know, examples of how things would be today. And so how we could live peace. There hasn't been peace yet. So Jah came and went like a thief in the night, but the peace hasn't started, and that's why the seventh seal hasn't opened. When the seventh trumpet and the seventh seal is opened, uh, that's when the peace will begin. Rastas believe that Haile Selassie that Jesus will come down from the sky and on the Mount of Olives and start the world peace or something like that. I don't believe in the rapture or anything like it. I believe that gods are always embellished, and that this is a very real thing, and it's not nothing. There's nothing embellished about any of these things. Um, there's talk of the Pope the Pope will die and then resurrect, and then there'll be a fake era of peace. And I've heard so many different things, but I think that that it's all just lessons, and that's why there's this big gap between the sixth and seventh seal that we need to learn. And when we finally have had enough, and there's been enough war and enough bloodshed and enough, it becomes obvious enough that war doesn't work, then we'll finally stop war and stop being so narcissistically competitive with each other, and start unifying each other and being inclusive and being one love. And then we won't be wasting our energy on those things, and we can concentrate and get more in sync with nature, and stop and start healing the earth and healing ourselves and living more one with nature, so we're not destroying um, renewable resources and things like that, using more hemp, and everything. Have you ever read the last chapter of the Bible, Revelations 22? The herb would be for the healing of the nations. But I think that also means hemp, using more hemp products and more vegetarianism, less meat, flexitarian, and these things. So that's why I don't I don't know how the seventh seal is going to be opened. In the book that I showed you, Haile Selassie, he believes that the seventh seal ended with a satellite that lost communication with the Earth for 30 minutes, because that's what would happen. There would be something in space, and we'd lose communication somehow for 30 minutes or something like that. I'm not really sure what that's going to mean. It hasn't happened yet, and I don't really I don't even know what to guess or what to say. But I don't believe the seventh seal has been opened, because I don't believe the peace has started yet. you know but you can believe whatever you want.